and gentlemen, let's go. Let's go. We ain't got no time to waste. Let's go. Let's go. You are now listening to Jason Anderson, and you are in the zone.
You're in the zone with Jason Anderson on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
I'm glad he doesn't have any NFL experience. I'm glad he hasn't learned the fear that's in this league. That's because it's tough for all our coaches. They're afraid. They go to analytics, and it gets difficult. I mean, he doesn't have all that.
You're in the zone on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
Yeah.
All right, a Tuesday edition of The Zone right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Jason Anderson with you, Josh Brisco, Beards. We head up until 2 o'clock the next 4 hours. We've got you. Hanging out, talking some football, some NFL football, some college football today as well. Maybe a little college basketball mixed in along the way with the college basketball season tipping off last night. All three teams, Mizzou, KU, K-State, winning in their games against Southern Indiana, Nebraska, Omaha, and UT Rio Grande Valley, respectively. And games coming up this weekend as well. Game number 2 Thursday and Friday for those three local schools. 2 on Friday, Mizzou, K-State, KU playing North Dakota State on Thursday.
No
Already
way.
Breaking news. What is the deal here?
Week 11, Chiefs versus Chargers has been flexed to primetime.
So 3:25 to Sunday Night Football?
Yes, now it'll be Steelers and Bengals in its place. And Josh, you and I have the same feeling.
I'm just glad you really do come prepared on Mondays, Jason.
Just on Mondays?
No,
Thanks.
specifically.
No, I appreciate that. No.
Specifically on Mondays, not exclusively on Mondays.
Is that a damning with faint praise?
No. I'm just thinking about myself. I'm just being selfish.
I know. I feel bad for you.
It's fine. It's
not fine.
It's the
It's
life
not
we've
fine.
chosen.
When you say it's fine, it's not fine.
It's fine. But
Tis the life we've chosen.
It is, and I'm not asking anyone to feel bad for any of us who get paid to cover the Chiefs.
That's right.
I am just also, a person who likes to have games over earlier in the day because the post-game show goes very late, and we have a show the next day. I can't see Steven or Nate anymore. I'm guessing they had a similar slouch.
Are you on that post game?
Occasionally.
No, I mean, are you on the Chargers one? Because aren't you heading out of town?
Oh, hold on a second. Oh, Beard, this is a great point for me and not for you. Am I safe? I think I might be safe on this one.
I thought you said after the Jags noon
that's
game,
correct.
You were out of town. You wouldn't be there for that next
correct.
postgame.
Oh, somebody drew a short straw, and it's not me?
It's not me either. I just can't do it that day. What day is it? I don't know, but I'm busy. I'm probably busy that night.
No, I'm going to miss the Rams game.
Oh, you're going to miss the Rams game?
No, I'm missing the Chargers game.
There you
That's
go.
20th. That's November 20th, Beard? Is that what you said?
It just, yeah,
Chief
November
Chargers.
20th.
Yep.
Never mind. Great news for me. Hey, Beard, sorry. Suck it. I am
Take
out of
that.
here.
Take that, Beards. You got to stay up late. You know what Josh is going to do after the game is over? Go to sleep.
I'm going to go out and I'm going to touch some sand. That's what I'm going to do after that game.
Is that a metaphor or you're just actually going to touch sand?
No, I'll be in Florida. It'll be great.
Good for you.
We'll touch some sand.
Good for you, man. All right, so that breaking news right out of the gates, that has been flexed, Chargers and Chiefs, to Sunday Night Football. And we will see if the Chiefs are sitting 7-2, if they are sitting 6-3, and we're scratching our head leading into that game as to what happened this weekend. As I said yesterday, and I'll say a number of times this week, this does feel like a perfect description of a trap game. And I do believe those exist in the NFL. See Week 3, the Indianapolis Colts. This one at home, physical game from the Titans matchup. Found a way to win. So exhausted after the game. Travis Kelce exhausted after the game. Patrick Mahomes saying at the podium he's already texted his trainer, Bobby, that he won't be coming in tomorrow. Quick aside, he goes and trains the day after games, too.
What a try hard.
He's a robot, man. That's a humble brag right there.
It really is.
I'm not going to go in and train tomorrow. I already told him I was very tired for today's game. Sorry,
I was complaining about doing the post-game show.
Yeah. Josh, I don't want to go in and talk about the game tomorrow. I'm going to be so tired.
Talked about the game. I'm so sleepy.
It's ridiculous.
I feel for Beards.
So you have a very physical Titans game where they found a way to win. Now you've got this huge matchup in division, what might be a 7-2 versus a 6-3 team matchup that's been flexed to Sunday Night Football. A team that it took everything you had to win early in the season, including a pick 6 at the goal line. And in the middle, you got a Jags team. Feisty. Going to give it the old college try any given Sunday. And your 10-point favorites in that game. Yeah, that's a concerning game because they're good enough to win. They're good enough to win. They've, what's the record, 3-6? So they're 3-6 this year with the 6 losses all coming by 1 score. So we'll see what happens in that. We'll talk with Adam Teicher coming up at 11 o'clock, ESPN Chiefs insider for us, Adam Teicher in the 11 o'clock hour. We'll talk some college football with Braden Gall, 440 Podcast Network, ESPN Radio, Athlon. We'll talk with him about the college football goings-on this past weekend. K-State, Mizzou, losing close games where both had chances to win, and KU going bowling, which I predicted. I told everybody that, anything less than 7 wins this year, complete and total failure, if you ask me, for Lance Leipold. So he hasn't even accomplished anything in my personal record book. No, it has been an extraordinary season for KU. And right now, they have the same record as K-State. And had you told me 9 games in,
crazy,
that they would have the same record as K-State, I would say, my God, what happened to the Wildcats?
What happened to Kansas State?
Wow. Were they ravaged by injuries again? Is Chris Kleiman getting fired?
Is Chris Kleiman okay?
Yeah. What's the deal? Did they cancel the program?
Right.
What happened? But it is a total credit to KU and what they've accomplished this year. So not even the season being over, still 3 weeks left to play, 3 games left to play. You've got a total of 16 wins between the 3 schools. And I believe the question from Mick Schaefer was, do the 3 schools combine for 15? Huh. It was on a Sunday Sound. And at the time, you're like, over under 2, over under 5, and over under like 7.
Yeah. That was about right.
Hey, do they get to 15 wins? Yes, by week 9.
The state of Kansas itself could do that.
Is already at 12, yeah.
Yeah.
With 6 games, 5 games left, because each of them have 2 and then they play each other.
Oh, yeah, sure. And 1 guaranteed.
That's a good point. So they already have 13. Oh, unless it's a tie.
Whoa,
wait.
Hold
it's
on.
College football.
College football figured this out. Crazy.
So they're at 13. They need 1 win apiece by either of the schools in the other 4 games. Go 2-2.
That really
is
unbelievable.
And they would combine, at least Kansas alone would get to 15 wins. And if Mizzou beats New Mexico State, they would get to 20 wins between the 3 schools combined. I wonder the last time that happened. I'll let somebody else look that up.
Curtis.
I didn't say that. I just said I'll let somebody else do that. We'll talk with Braden Gall about that.
Somebody else in the office over there who I can see?
Yeah, Curtis.
Sits in this chair 4 hours after me?
Parentheses, somebody else, Seabolt.
Yeah. That's
Curtis,
that's
somebody
right.
else, Seabolt. Listen to the program starting at 2 o'clock. Soren Petro and Curtis, somebody else, Seabolt, will be hanging out with you for those 4 hours leading into Hawk Talk. Tonight at 6.
The Cincinnati Bengals have tweeted our official statement in response to being flexed out of Sunday Night Football, and then it's a video of Joe Burrow saying, I don't care about any of that. I'll play at 6 a.m. in the middle of a field somewhere. We don't care. I don't care. Oh, the cool. Bengals appear to really, really explicitly not care about getting flexed out of Sunday Night Football.
I don't care so much we're going to tweet about it. I don't care so much we're going to let you know that I don't care. I'm going to go out of my way to say that I don't care because that's how much I don't care. I don't care the most of anybody that has never cared before. My care is actually a negative. That's why I'm telling you how much I don't care.
There's the drill tweet that I think was like, I'm not mad, don't tweet that I'm mad. And that's I think about that basically once a week now.
It was an old meme from Twitter a long time ago, and it was like 2011 or 12, and it feels like was the beginning of what we've come to know as Twitter. And it was a meme that said, sorry, honey, I can't come to work. Somebody disagrees with me on Twitter. Or I can't come to bed. Somebody disagrees with me on Twitter right now.
Absolutely. Such an early internet, just like nail on the head. Perfect 2012 action.
Can't come to bed right now. Somebody disagrees with me on Twitter.
Somebody disagrees.
I got to stay up here. Then somebody else put a meme out. It was like... what would you prefer, oranges or bananas? I'd prefer bananas. Why do you hate bananas? What's the deal with you? This is absurd. It's an assault on all bananas. Shocking, very sad, and I can't believe that you even exist in this world that you would say those things about bananas.
Why do you hate everyone who likes bananas?
It's ridiculous. It is ridiculous.
Unbelievable.
So all of that to say, we'll talk with Braden Gall coming up at noon. And then Todd Leabo, 1 o'clock, little Fact or Fiction. We'll be playing with Todd Leabo today as well. It's been a few weeks since we played some Fact or Fiction.
Yes,
Fact.
it is. Fact, correct.
That is
Free
correct.
point for Jason. He starts up 1-0.
Thank you. Take that, Beards and Todd. You guys didn't answer first.
Take that point right back.
First come, first serve point.
I don't care.
It'll be a tiebreaker somehow anyway.
It will
All
be.
you got to do is
it
prepare
will
for the tiebreaker. You don't even need to care about the answers to the questions. Just prepare for the tiebreaker. That's it. All you got to do, really, with this professor's test, just prepare for the final answer, okay?
You got to get Final Jeopardy right.
Just get the final answer.
And really don't
and you're
blow it.
fine.
Just don't look, because we have had a couple Fact or Fictions where someone's taking themselves out of the conversation really early on with some bad answers.
Look, these are the 3 essay questions that will be on your test. One of these 3 will be your final. Just prepare for those. The rest of it doesn't matter.
That's right.
He or she is going to grade on that final essay more than anything else in that. So just prepare for these 3 questions. You'll get one of the 3, and you'll be fine. Just prepare for the tiebreaker coming up at about 1:52. Listen in for that. 913-912-4810 is the text line to be a part of the show. 913-912-4810. We'll hear from Jim Irsay in his wildly entertaining press conference from yesterday. We will hear from a couple of others as well throughout the show. One of those being Chris Ballard as well, talking about the S.
He
Talking
was
about
asked,
his S.
The question was to Chris Ballard for later was, how's the team doing? that was essentially the question. And he decided to talk about it more.
Talking about the S that was in and around his stomach.
Yeah.
That is no longer there because of what the media was doing to him.
Exactly.
We'll hear from that. And then Dan Orlovsky weighs in on who his MVP is through 9 weeks.
Andy Dalton.
8 games. Yeah, mainly with that throw to, was that Callaway or Smith?
I don't remember.
That he missed.
I don't
wide
remember.
open.
I blacked out.
He might have blacked out before he threw the ball as well.
I think it's important, even as degenerate football fans. I love NFL football. I'll watch any primetime game. I really will.
Yeah.
Sometimes you got to give yourself permission to put it on in the background. That's what I did last night.
Absolutely.
Last night was it was at halftime. It was put that thing on in the background. Let's organize the home office. Let's do some work tonight.
To me, it was, how do I keep track of the Monday Night Football game while keeping track of KU and Mizzou until 8, while keeping track of KU, Mizzou, and K-State, and then the football game as well starting at 8 o'clock. I would rather them have staggered. K-State was already starting at 8, so I'm not trying to push them out to where everybody's asleep.
They're fine there.
Well, not even that. If you're going to start at 8, maybe start at 9. Just for my own watching purposes. K-State fans that want to watch at 8 o'clock, great, awesome. Probably wanted to watch at 7 o'clock. But maybe 9. Or Mizzou or KU at 9. Doesn't matter. Just a little stagger. A little
stagger would be nice.
7, 8, and 9, that'd be fine.
Let's figure this out by conference play, everybody.
Yeah.
Let's just keep an eye on this one.
So there's only 1 hour that you're really watching 2 games at once?
Yeah.
Or I guess the 8 to 9 and 9 to 10 you'd be. So 2 hours. 2 of the 4 hours you'd be watching 2 games,
It's
but never
2022.
watching 3.
We need better split screen technology. It's ridiculous this is still as big of a problem
Can't
as
I
it is.
choose 3
Why
different
can't
screens?
I want to be Scott
Yeah.
Hansen for myself. I want my own Octo box.
Luckily, I've got the man cave with the 3 TVs. So I was able to keep track with those. We may get into some of that today as well. 913-912-4810.
You're also going to submit a bid for the Washington Commanders, Jason? I mean, good Lord, if you're made out of money, 3 TVs.
Yeah, that's right. And especially how expensive TVs are today. Boy,
I was watching KU on Renee's phone. I was watching Monday Night Football on my neighbor's TV just through the window they left open.
I hated when they started flipping over. I'm like,
So
no!
annoying.
Tossing pebbles at their window.
Yeah,
Go back!
Hey, turn it up! Turn it up!
Actually used my remote to then
Ooh, that's good.
to then get it hooked up to their TV so I
Yeah.
can turn it back.
I paired my phone with
Got that
their
paired.
Roku, and it was a whole thing.
Paired is the word that I could not find.
That's all
I was
right.
thinking more of mangoes and bananas and oranges, but pear.
Why do you
Cannot
hate
get-
bananas? You can't stop talking about how much you hate bananas.
Or not even thinking of pears, just ignoring pears is what I was doing.
Love pear.
All right,
Underrated.
so Clark Hunt talked yesterday.
Yeah.
Let's hear this clip from Clark Hunt. It's the first time he's had a chance to weigh in on the Britt Reed situation and culpability of the organization now that that has come to a conclusion, at least from the terms of sentencing. So here is Clark Hunt weighing in on Britt Reed and what he can and can't say about what they have found in their investigation.
Well, the first thing I would say is that our heart and thoughts continue to be with Ariel Young and her family and everybody who was impacted by the accident that evening. With the case being wrapped up, I can't go into details, but what I can share with you is we did an investigation at the time, and that investigation showed that there was no gathering of employees either at the practice facility or the stadium where alcohol was consumed. And beyond that, I really can't share anymore.
Did you, by saying that, Clark, does that mean that you were in compliance with what I believe are the NFL rules not to have any alcohol in the facility?
Yes, that is the NFL rule that no alcohol is consumed at the team facilities, and we were in compliance.
Let's go next to Todd Leabo. Go, Todd.
So you expect no punishment or anything from the National Football League involving anything around Britt Reed?
I'm not expecting anything, no.
Okay, so a few things that came from that. Not expecting anything. We can even go, reverse order. Not expecting anything, because that's the part of the story from the sports aspect and the Chiefs organization specific aspect of what happens now. The culpability of the organization, where are they, and what will the NFL have to say once the legal proceedings wrap up, which we know they have done now. We know when Willie Gay's legal proceedings wrapped up, then he got a suspension. Frank Clark's legal proceedings wrapped up. He got a suspension. They put out a statement to the NFL when Britt Reed was officially arrested that we are monitoring the situation, we will be investigating, and we will let the legal process play out. And when that has run its course, we will then, I don't remember what the terminology was, but essentially then we will figure out if there is action to take. Okay, so that is now, a week or so going on since then, if there is that. So they're not expecting anything, which from the football side of it and the Chiefs side of it is certainly good if they're not expecting anything, because what we've discussed is whether or not the Chiefs would lose a draft pick because of the rules that were in place, the rules that specifically state that there is no alcohol on team facilities in any way, shape, or form. The reason that was implemented is because the NFL wanted to avoid situations just as this. So if that had been the investigation, if they had found out that something had taken place at the team facilities, then they would have absolutely been held responsible, and I think there would have been fines, and I think a draft pick probably a part of it. So not expecting anything, not expecting a penalty. The part about the investigation they did with the no alcohol was consumed, there was no gathering of coaches or personnel, no alcohol was consumed on the premises, and they were in compliance, is really interesting because, maybe I'm naive here. I don't believe Clark Hunt would come out and say, we did an investigation, no alcohol was consumed, we were in compliance, and then a week later, the NFL come out and go, our investigation shows that they had a gathering, a big party, they were all drinking alcohol, they were taking bourbon shots, and then they all drove, and Britt Reed was the one that got in a car accident. I don't think that will be the case, so maybe it's just simply being naive, but when Britt Reed says after, the accident happens to the police in the report that he had just left work, Clark Hunt said he can't weigh in on a number of things because of the legal proceedings. But when he says, I just left work, and he's got a .113, 40% over the legal limit 2 hours after, where was the alcohol consumed then? Was it in his car? Did he drive off the premises and then consume alcohol? Did he go to a bar first and then go to work for a little bit and then leave work? Was he out with friends, which could have been the case, go out to dinner, have a bunch of drinks, drive the facilities, cut a little tape, do a little something that I got to finish this up, and then leave and go, I just left work. But if he says I had 2 or 3 and I just left work, the assumption would be connecting those, right?
Yes.
So I don't know what happened in the investigation, and I don't know where the alcohol was consumed, but Clark Hunt's certainly saying they were in compliance, no alcohol consumed on the premises, and they are not expecting anything from the NFL.
This is very cynical, but there's one word in that whole clip that I think carries the most weight. I don't know that it means anything here, but it's what hit me the hardest from this. We did an investigation.
Mm-hmm.
Does that mean the Chiefs did an investigation? Is that an internal, we will overlook our, not overlook, but we will look into our oversight of all of this, our processes, our rules and regulations? Because what I could see happening there is the Chiefs saying, hey, all of our rules were followed by everybody except for this guy. And this was the outlier. No gathering, again, no big party, whatever. That'd be a crazy thing for Clark Hunt to voluntarily lie about. So I'm with you on that of like, I think that you could probably find a logical through line to lone wolf, bad situation, horrible accident, bad timing, all of that. I find that relatively believable given the circumstances. But I also find myself wondering what happens if someone else does that investigation, and specifically how the Chiefs could have been in compliance with what you just said of Britt Reed telling the police at the accident site that he had just left work and had 2 or 3 drinks. And who knows if it was actually 2 or 3 or not, but that his blood alcohol was very high, like you said, that late after originally.
Police have said that's the go-to, that I've had a couple.
Right.
2 or 3, it's kind of the go-to.
That makes sense to me, that would be a trope. So I think the Chiefs could say he was not in compliance, but we were. And if that is the cold hard truth, the Chiefs shouldn't lose picks for that. I don't think. I don't, or be punished as an organization if they have one person not following the protocols that everyone else is following. But I would be very curious for a little more information about who did the investigation, what it was looking for, and how long that all took. I also would say that through that line, there is no assumption that the Chiefs would be punished by the NFL. But I would like to hear from someone other than the Chiefs as to what that investigation uncovered.
The we were in compliance stood out to me as well. But then it's hard to it's hard to pull back the no alcohol consumed on the premises.
Right.
That's pretty straightforward and a very firm stance or information to put out there that had that not been part of this, if it was just we were in compliance, there was no gathering of coaches or anything, and we're not expecting anything, then it would be, okay, well, then no gathering. Is it just Britt Reed? He was doing it on his own. We as an organization were in compliance. We're not expecting anything, but it doesn't mean that we can't get it. But we're not expecting anything. The definitive statement of no alcohol consumed at the facilities is one that is really hard to pull back, is hard to dial back, and it's hard to put that out there if it weren't something that you've done your investigation and found out that it did not happen, but then it gets to the point of the unknown, unless you're Britt Reed or the Chiefs, in which they can't say anything with the legal proceedings or whatever it might be, or just choose not to, of where the alcohol was consumed, because we know alcohol was consumed, and we know he said he had just left work, and we know it was 40% over the legal limit.
It bears the question of, if it was not at the facility, where did all of that alcohol come from? Where was it consumed?
Absolutely.
And I do think the burden of proof on that lands on the Chiefs.
Yes.
To say, hey, it can't just be somewhere else. You have to be able to specifically say where this came from. And I'm not surprised that Clark Hunt didn't volunteer that, but I hope that someone eventually is able to find what the Chiefs' answer to that question would ultimately be.
And just because Clark Hunt is not expecting anything from the NFL doesn't mean that there wouldn't be anything handed down by the NFL. It may not be extreme, like if we heard there were a bunch of coaches watching film and drinking, and there was film, there was video of it and everything. Then
lack of organizational control is a very different thing. Yeah,
you might be wondering, and maybe this is the cynic in me as well. At times, you'd be wondering, okay, does it rise to the level of a first-round draft pick in 2024?
Yeah,
because the NFL is having the draft in Kansas City in 2023. Like, would they go that route? If it was something so extreme, would they actually take the first-round draft pick away from the Chiefs and have that be sort of the backdrop of Kansas City hosting this? And this is what happened, and this is the penalty, and they don't have a draft pick. They forfeit it because of A, B, and C. I don't know. There's the cynic and the jaded part of the big business that makes me wonder if that was even the case. But if Clark Hunt is not expecting anything and something is handed down, it would be shocking if it was something that was really, or to a degree, debilitating for an organization, like forfeiting a first-round draft pick, like the Miami Dolphins have had to do because of the tampering with Tom Brady and Sean Payton as well. So that's the information from Clark Hunt with Britt Reed and where the organization stands as well. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back. We will hear Clark Hunt weigh in on the draft specifically, and Brett Veach, he cannot trade that first-round draft pick. We've talked about Brett Veach. He said that Clark Hunt told me not to trade that first-round draft pick. So we'll hear Clark Hunt as to whether or not that is actually true. And then one of the wild press conferences that took place yesterday with Jim Irsay and the hiring of Jeff Saturday. And looking at the Chiefs' running game, is there a correlation between offensive success and the Chiefs' efficient running of the football as opposed to inefficient that we've seen in a number of games? More Zone next.
Want to see more of The Zone? Watch the show live on the Sports Radio 810 WHB Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch. The Zone with Jason Anderson.
You were just so easy to hate, and you're right here, and you seem like a really nice guy, but man, you were easy to hate.
Well, thank you.
On Sports Radio 810.
Nine 912-408-10. Text says, maybe Reed lied to the police about coming from the facility. Maybe he wasn't coming from there at all. Maybe.
In the sentencing, though,
it
was determined that
specifically he came from Arrowhead State or from Arrowhead facilities. In the sentencing, that's what was agreed upon as a fact of the case.
This is going to sound like I'm really directly implying this. I'm really not, but it is worth noting that Clark Hunt is not under oath at a podium.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So I don't know that Clark Hunt had anything specifically that he was trying to dissuade anyone from finding out there, but that is worth noting. If you're going to go facts of the case, you probably got to go with the court documentation.
Yeah. Text says, drunk drivers involved in an accident have never been known to lie to police. Right. And nobody has said that there's a 0% possibility that he would be lying.
No one has ever said at any level, I don't believe, on the record or anything that I've ever heard, I don't think anyone's ever said where else Britt Reed would have been coming from. It's right by Arrowhead.
Right. And at the time, coaches were not allowed to be anywhere out in public because of the COVID restrictions.
A week out from the Super Bowl in the COVID year.
Less than that. It's 3 days out from the Super Bowl because they would have been in Tampa. If it wasn't for COVID, they would have been in Tampa that week. And he would not have been in Kansas City. So, again, I don't know what happened, but the court said he was coming from Arrowhead Stadium. He said he was coming from Arrowhead Stadium. His lawyer and the other lawyer and the judge all agreed to the fact of the case that he was coming from Arrowhead Stadium. So maybe he was lying.
Clark Hunt didn't say he didn't come from Arrowhead.
Right, absolutely.
He said where he was asking about where the drinking was.
Yeah. Other people have said, well, people keep, alcohol in their car. Could be. Maybe he was out there, drinking in the car. I have not eliminated that as a possibility. Just wondering, as we've said, if it wasn't at Arrowhead Stadium, where was the alcohol consumed? Could have been at home. Drinks a whole bunch, goes there, files a couple things away at Arrowhead in his office, gets back in the car, leaves, and then, I was coming from Arrowhead. Well, the alcohol wasn't consumed there. Other texts have said, at least one other text that said, maybe he's got a water bottle that's vodka. And it's like, well, look, Britt Reed, he had water the whole time. What was he drinking? There are a number of different possibilities.
Yes. The number of different possibilities, there are multiple different little catches for plausible deniability.
Yeah.
Plenty of places where the Chiefs really may have been in the dark on any number of this. There are a lot of places where this is not all like a enormous nefarious cover-up. But also, I think if you are going to specifically try to say that he was not coming from Arrowhead or drinking at Arrowhead, you need to have the answer to where he was coming from if you're Britt Reed or the Chiefs, etc.
And also, if he was trying to participate in some big cover-up, and I don't think this is some big scheme, conspiracy, thing that's going on behind the scenes. Again, maybe I'm naive. If this was a part of it, then Britt Reed could have easily changed his story after telling the cops and say, no, I wasn't. I was lying about that. I was trying to say, hey, I'm Britt Reed, and I was coming from work, but I actually wasn't coming from work. I was coming from a different place. If it's like this big old, let's make sure we hide this or have some sort of a cover-up. I don't believe that's the case. I'm just fascinated as to where the alcohol would have been consumed when he says he was coming from Arrowhead. The police say he was coming from Arrowhead. The court says he was coming from Arrowhead. His lawyer says he was coming from Arrowhead. But Clark Hunt saying they were in compliance, no alcohol consumed on the team premises, and they are not expecting anything. So there we go. We'll see what happens moving forward, if there's any update to this as well. Clark Hunt was also asked about the draft, heading to Kansas City, 2023, and a first-round draft pick. And it's been talked about that Brett Veach cannot trade his first-round draft pick. He was, whether joking or not, at the previous draft, that they could make moves, but they could not touch the 2023 first-round draft pick. Clark Hunt was asked about that specifically, and then also his thoughts on the draft coming to Kansas City and getting closer and closer.
Well, Brett and I have had an ongoing joke here for several years since we learned that the draft is coming to Kansas City, that, we had to have our first round pick for this draft. Of course, at the end of the day, if there's a transaction that makes sense for the club, certainly I'm not going to stand in the way of that. I think the Kadarius Toney trade that took place a little over a week ago is an example of that. A player that Brett had been very excited about for a couple of years, and we had an opportunity to make a trade and add somebody who can not only help us this year, but will help us down the road. So from a planning standpoint for the draft, most of that work is taking place between the NFL, the Kansas City Sports Commission, and the city. They've got to get ready to host approximately 500,000 fans, which is just a staggering number as you think about the stress that the infrastructure in the city will be under. But what I'm most excited about is just the incredible celebration of the National Football League and indirectly the Kansas City Chiefs that draft's going to be. It's going to be a great opportunity for everyone who's associated with the Chiefs Kingdom to come to Kansas City and party and celebrate for a couple of days while the draft takes place. And of course, most importantly, at the end of the day, I hope we get some great players who help us win on the field.
I do believe it was more joking by Brett Veach. I know we've talked about it a number of times, but if Brett Veach says, we got a chance to win a Super Bowl with this guy this year, and we'd be giving up the 32nd pick in the draft to do this, we would not have a first rounder. Clark would say, Brett, do you believe this is what's in the best interest of the organization and this team, franchise? Yes. Then do it. Then do it. Like you said, they traded a third round. It's a day 2 pick, so they could have had 3 picks on the second day, and hey, here's another selection by the Chiefs. And it's not like if you don't have a first rounder, you then forfeit your chance of hosting the draft. The draft was going to be in Miami this year, but they traded for Bradley Chubb and they forfeited. So now we've got to find another place to go. It would still be in Kansas City. And oddly enough, though, I wonder how much the Chiefs and the Royals 2015 and 2020 parades helped with maybe planning of this.
Has to have, right?
He said, hosting 500,000 people down there at Union Station for the draft. Well, that's where the culmination of the parades were, with people on the lawn and all around Union Station and parking down there and traffic, and you even had an entire street cut off because that's where the parade route was. You had all other streets that were cut off, and you couldn't go down certain places because they had them blocked off because of parade routes, things like that. That came together within a couple, 3 days. Mm-hmm. They've had a couple of years of planning this, so at least they know what it would look like in the congestion of everybody going and gathering at that spot, that one night, and that massive amount of people. How many were there at the Royals?
So the number that I had in my head was 800,000. Is that too high? I wasn't there for that one. I was there for the Chiefs when it was freezing, and so there were fewer people out there because it was February.
There were fewer there with the Chiefs than there was with the Royals.
And I mean, this is interesting because it's going to be a destination event, right? Like there's a stage, for the draft itself, but also now Kansas City's preparing for a World Cup, and I mean, the draft was announced before that, but some of the infrastructure things that Kansas City has been working on now for a number of years. I mean, as a person who fulfills the Kansas City stereotype of basically looking like a tourist in Kansas City at most times, just with the hats and shirts and all that.
You're wearing the hat. I'm wearing the Kansas City hoodie.
Yeah. Literally, I mean, like we the three of us each have some various piece of Kansas City merch right now.
You look like you just bought your apparel at the airport.
Right, but here's the thing. But also, it's dope. So that's that's the win-win that Kansas City has.
You can't buy that at the airport.
No, that's true.
Not yet.
Remind me, where is it they're having the draft? Like where specifically in the
Union
city?
Station.
Okay, that's what I thought.
So it should be with the World War I memorial at the far end, and have the whole lawn for fans and everything. It's gonna be hectic. It's gonna be congested, but I am hopeful. Especially also, like, this is kind of in the weeds, but through all that World Cup stuff, you heard Clark talk here about the Kansas City Sports Commission. Through everything that they did in the World Cup, just like pitch process, I have a tremendous amount of faith in that organizational body because they got it done, and I imagine they're going to do it again.
And with the streetcar, you know,
Yep,
you can
huge,
park further
huge.
away and then ride the streetcar down there and back. So it might be a little bit of a wait getting on and off
Sure.
that thing.
But not as much a wait as you
Yes.
spend driving laps looking for a parking spot.
Kind of like trying to get on the L after a game in Chicago at Wrigley. Like, well, we'll be here a while, but you know what? Let's have some fun. Let's go around to some bars as well.
Exciting times in Kansas City.
No doubt. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back, and I believe we have time to hear a little bit of a compilation mashup of one of the more wild press conferences we've heard from an owner. So we heard Clark Hunt's press conference, and then also Jim Irsay had his press conference later on that day. And boy, the juxtaposition of two different owners and two styles of public speaking. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back. We'll hear from Jim Irsay next.
Follow the show on Twitter at J810Anderson, at JB Brisco, at Beards McFly, and at Sports Radio 810. You're in the zone.
Perfect sports radio right there. That's great. It's awesome. Worst thing ever. Dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life.
With Jason Anderson.
I kind of agree with both.
On Sports Radio 810 WHB.
All right, we'll talk with Adam Teicher from ESPN Chiefs Insider. Coming up at 11 o'clock. Couple of segments with Adam, and then we'll talk with Braden, Gall, College Football Insider, and break down the college football world. So Jim Irsay hired Jeff Saturday yesterday after firing Frank Reich, and it went over as expected across the NFL and fans everywhere of what? So Jeff Saturday, who was a high school football coach and a consultant for the Indianapolis Colts, is the new coach, and here is it's about a minute and a half mashup of just some fun moments from Jim Irsay.
Not deceptively sliced up either.
Like
this isn't like haha, let's see if we can make him sound funny. These are real answers. You're just missing the question. Shout out to Tim and friends on Twitter for doing the hard work.
This is not cuts on Friday.
No, correct.
Where we try to make it sound as bad as possible.
Some of them might appear in cuts on Friday, but we did not really do that here.
All right, so let's take a listen to this minute and a half wild press conference with Jim Irsay yesterday.
We're the fourth winningest franchise in the league since 2000. All right, that means in the upper quartile of winners, we're in the top quartile of that upper quartile. You want to bet against this guy? Put your money down, people. Love to see it. Love to see it. No, the game is not different. We don't build rockets to go to Mars. We're not nuclear scientists. That is none of our jobs here. It's a very simple jobs that we do here. I don't know how to make sausage. I don't know what goes into sausage. But I do know how to build a football team because I've been around for 52 years. There is no problem of perception, except some of you guys make a problem of perception, but you need hits, so you got to do it. I understand. I do the same thing. I was a broadcast journalism major, too. I don't know. You guys ever held accountable to your editors bringing you in and say, well, you wrote that stuff. It was all wrong. You're fired. But I'm not sending a fighter in the ring I love. You know, when I think that it's time and let him get pummeled. No. You know, certain people just have it. They have it. And you see it when you know it. I've never hired a losing head coach. We're the fourth winningest team in the league. It's not about belief, it's about fact. What we've done, we're better than most all. It's that simple. Our record proves it over a period of time. So you don't have to believe much when it's there in black and white.
Jim Irsay is the loud, close-talking uncle you warn your significant other about before you introduce him to the family for the first time at a holiday. Listen, Uncle Jim, he's gonna get he'll be kind of sloppy. He's going to be talking to you most of the time because you're new. He's a close talker. He's loud. I want to apologize beforehand, and I'll do what I can to help intervene. But I want you to know what's going to happen here.
Quick stat for you.
Yeah.
The last Mars landing was in February 2021.
Oh.
Last Colts playoff win was in January 2019.
Well, maybe they should start building rockets to go to Mars instead of building football teams.
Maybe he should hire an astronaut to be the head coach.
They're in the highest quartile.
Of the highest quartile.
Of the quartiles.
Of the highest quartile. Big analytics guy.
If you're speaking of quartiles specifically, and not just breaking them down by quartiles, because if you did, they'd be in the highest quartile.
They need a quartile back.
Picture this guy.
Become an influential leader with the University of St. Mary MBA. Ranked as the most affordable online business school, a St. Mary MBA offers an exceptional return on investment. stmary.edu/MBA. The Chiefs are getting even more action in primetime in Week 11 as the NFL announced today its first flex scheduling move of the year, moving Chiefs-Chargers in Los Angeles to Sunday Night Football on November 20th. The game was originally scheduled for 3:25. In college ball, the local schools got the basketball season rolling last night with Mizzou's win over Southern Indiana, K-State's win over UT Rio Grande Valley, and Kansas's win over Omaha. Next, KU has North Dakota State before meeting Duke on November 15th. Tonight at 6, more KU talk on Hawk Talk before Sports Night with Sterling Holmes. Chiefs insider Adam Teicher of ESPN joins the Zone next. This is SportsCenter.
The Zone with Jason Anderson.
Adam, your night with Beards and Brisco, if you won the prize that the three of you just get to hang out and do what?
Wow.
Yeah, so many possibilities. So much to do.
How about we can't somebody else win this prize? Why do I have to win this prize?
Weekdays from 10 to 2 on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
All right, we'll continue right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Jason Anderson with you, Josh Brisco, Beards. We head up until 2 o'clock. We've got you for the next 3 hours. We'll talk some college football coming up at noon. Todd Leabo at 1 o'clock. Do you do you think Todd will want to talk college basketball today?
Shh, don't give away one of my fact or fiction questions. It's mean, and you're going to get a free point for it. So don't give it too much away.
I apologize. I just didn't know in the 1 o'clock hour if he would want to have a
Why don't we ask him about it? I can't think of why he wouldn't want to talk about a little college ball.
You know what? We can ask him or Sam Houston. One of the two. One of the two can maybe
Sam
weigh
Houston
in.
joins us next.
All right, let's bring in Adam Teicher, Chiefs insider from ESPN, joining us here in the Zone. Adam, what's up? How are you, sir?
Good, Jason. How are you doing today?
I am doing just fine, Looking forward to our conversation because there are a lot of things that I want to talk to you about and get into about the game, about this Chiefs team and moving forward as well. But first, to get your thoughts on Clark Hunt had a press conference yesterday, and he weighed in, and with the different questions, it was about a minute and a half his answers about, the culmination of the Britt Reed case and the sentencing taking place and Clark Hunt's first opportunity to weigh in on that. Anything you took away from the, Clark Hunt saying that they were in compliance, there was no gathering, there were no coaches, no alcohol was consumed, and they are not expecting anything from the NFL after the Chiefs did their internal investigation?
Yeah, and he was, he was not really going to go anywhere with his answer other than to say that. So, obviously the Chiefs wanted that information out there, which is, good information to have out there. I'm not suggesting otherwise, but, it was just that's the point the Chiefs wanted to make here.
Yeah, Adam Teicher is our guest from ESPN, and he said he's not expecting anything from the NFL. Doesn't mean that the NFL won't present something just because he's not expecting anything. But
exactly,
we'll find out. So, we kind of talked about it once Willie Gay got his suspension, and we were like, okay, well, let's keep an eye out for Frank Clark because that the legal process has played its way out, and therefore the NFL would get involved after that. And they said when Britt Reed was arrested that they will let the legal process run its course, and when it's over, they will then be involved in whatever way they feel necessary. That's run its course, and now we'll find out. So we'll see if anything comes of it in the next week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, month and a half. I don't know. We'll find out. Adam Teicher from ESPN is our guest. What did you take away from this Titans game? We spent, Adam, a good portion of yesterday's show, and especially the first hour, kind of just discussing the difficulty of trying to discuss that game and figure out what we watched, if that makes sense. What did you take away from that game?
It was a bizarre game. You can watch a lot of football for a lot of years and not see a game like that. So no doubt it was strange. But my takeaway was, that Patrick Mahomes is a pretty good player. You know, I'd like to get your thought on this, Jason, but I was sitting there watching that game toward the end, and I was looking at his stats, and he had 60-some passes, and he had scored the touchdown and the two-point conversion and was leading the Chiefs in rushing because their running game was dismal. And I'm thinking, you know what? The Chiefs have never put so much on his shoulders as they put on today. They have never asked as much during one game from Pat Mahomes that they're asking tonight. And so I felt like he handled this burden without much of a problem at all. And I'm thinking, so this to me was one of his best games and maybe number one of his best game in his pro career. And I'm not saying that lightly. And I'm not, you know, if you're just looking at the stats and touchdown passes and all that, you know, it's obviously not that. It's not going to be his greatest game. But if you look in terms of how much help maybe the Chiefs were giving him and what else they had working for them, I feel like this was a really great effort on his part. And you don't want to ask that of any quarterback all the time, but sure nice to know if you need to go that well every once in a while, he's going to respond for you.
He, without penalties involved, and we know there were penalties that brought plays back in which they threw the ball, but without penalties, and I haven't gone back and added those up, he dropped back 78 times in plays that actually counted. He dropped back 78 times in plays that counted. Now you have penalties that took some plays away, like the Andrew Wiley hold. That was the 25-yard pass to Travis Kelce. That didn't count. That was another drop back. So tell you that's at least 79 right there, drop backs in the game. And so you're right. The amount that they put on his shoulders to say it's you, because each time he dropped back, and one of the elements of what the Titans were doing is every time Patrick Mahomes dropped back, obviously the mission is what defense are they in, where are your reads, delivering the ball accurately, all of that. But one of the first things that he had to do, it felt like each time he dropped back, is figure out, is the offensive line protecting me in a way that I can go through my reads? And if they aren't, then either I've got to get rid of the ball now, throw the ball away, or figure out a way to get out of the pocket. And sometimes it might be, okay, they're protecting me. Oh, wait, this guy just broke through and I felt like we had protection and now I'm sacked. Each time he threw the ball, there was just kind of wondering, like, would the protection be there? And I know at the end it was only 4 sacks, but man, it really felt like Mahomes was having to do a lot of just simply figuring out, where am I protected? Where do I need to go in the pocket? While trying to figure out what the Titans were doing on the back end, dropping 7, who's in zone, who's in man, where are my receivers? Are they in the right spot? Are they covered? And to do that 78 times in a game is asking a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I don't feel like he or any other player could do that early in a career. Like, for instance, his first year as a starter, his 5,000-yard, 50-touchdown season. I don't think he could have had a game like he had Sunday night early in his career, including in 2018. I think that's something he's kind of matured into. And, that's one of the great benefits of a running game that's working is it takes pressure off everybody else, but most particularly the starting quarterback. And he had none of that. I mean, their long run, it was 3 yards other than what he did the other night. So it was really all on him. And, he wasn't getting a lot of help at times from receivers. There were some drop passes. The interception, as we know, should have been caught by Kelce. So there was just so much going on in that game that he had to deal with. And he handled it and handled it to the point where the Chiefs won a game that, wow, I think for most of that game we were all sitting there thinking, well, they're not pulling this one out tonight.
It's how you find your MVP. I mean, frankly, in a game like that where it did not feel like they were going to win that game, and somehow on 3rd and 17, that's when Mahomes makes the biggest play of the game. And then on 3rd and 9, because look, if that's an incomplete pass on 3rd and 9, it's 4th down in a possession where they have gone 7 minutes already in the 4th quarter, taken off the clock to drive down there. There's 3 and change left on 3rd and 9. If that's just a regular, random, incomplete pass or something like that, or a sack, what does Andy Reid do? On 4th and 13, 4th and 14 if Patrick Mahomes gets sacked. Instead, he runs for the touchdown. A lot of talk about 3rd and 17, rightfully so, but that 3rd and 9 play was pretty big as well to run for the touchdown, and then the 2-point conversion. All of that on the same drive is just you know what? This was a man that said, I'll figure out a way to get it done. And this is back against the wall. There is no choice. There's nothing else that we can do. I got to get it done. And it worked out, and he made the plays. I mean, it's an MVP performance, even if the numbers don't back it up.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. And that's the thing. The people, if you're voting for the MVP, unless you watch that game or otherwise understand what we're talking about here, you would say, well, it wasn't a great performance on Mahomes' part. Only one touchdown. He threw a pick. His passer rating was only 81. That's a black mark on him when we're thinking about who we're going to vote for MVP. No, I think this was Exhibit A. Why, if you're going to vote for Pat Mahomes, this game was it. It was more than the San Francisco game or any other game that the Chiefs have had this year. This was Exhibit A because they needed every bit of what he gave them Sunday night, and it was a lot. I mean, he was giving them a ton. So I think this was, when we're talking in 25 years about what do you feel like were the top 2 or 3 games in Patrick Mahomes' career? I'm going to come back to this one here because I think he was that good for the Chiefs Sunday night.
They've played 8 games, and it's not like this was like the first or second highest. I know what his quarterback rating was, but QBR, he's still graded out as a 71.4 in QBR because it takes into protection, it takes into running. The ESPN, quarterback rating QBR. His highest was the Cardinals. He had a 93.8, but number 15 according to Pro Football Focus. But a 93.8, QBR. Tampa Bay, he had an 89.6. San Francisco, 89.8. And then Indianapolis, a 71.9, even in that loss. And Tennessee, a 71.4. So, it wasn't like, Mahomes had a 40 QBR, but made a couple of really good plays late and found a way to win. But he was the reason they were in that position anyway, because he just wasn't playing well. That wasn't the case. I mean, he was the reason they were even in position, it felt like, to have a chance to win because the offense just wasn't clicking, didn't feel like it had anything going, and it didn't have a counter. It didn't have a counter punch at all. And the Titans knew it. And Mike Vrabel and that sideline knew it, that the Chiefs were telling you that they didn't have a running game because they just simply weren't calling running plays even when they were within one possession. They were like, yeah, we're not doing it because it's not going to be successful. It's going to be a waste of a down. So we're just not going to call these running plays. And when you don't have that counter, it makes it more difficult. And that's what we were watching in a game where he had a 71.4 QBR. They weren't in the position because of his play. They ended up winning, almost entirely because of his play.
Yeah, and the only 2 games that he's played that I can recall that I would compare to these two or to the Tennessee game would be the Super Bowl against Tampa, which, he was running around for his life on basically every snap, and he wasn't getting a whole lot of help that way. So that would be another one. And obviously that one didn't work out for either him or the Chiefs. And the other one would be the second half of the AFC Championship game against New England. You remember they were down 14-0, and they scored 31 points, but their defense just couldn't bail them out. So I feel like those were the other 2 games where they just basically put it on his plate and said, you're going to have to do this yourself, kid.
What do you make of the fact that, there were 91 plays, 68 passes. He also added the 6 runs. He had 500 yards in passing and rushing combined, and they scored 20 points in an overtime session to get to 20. How do you sort of square that circle?
I don't. I can't. I mean, normally that stat sheet that you just described, there's like 5 turnovers or something by that team.
Yeah.
Well, the Chiefs had only 1. I can't explain this. That was one of the more bizarre games I was seeing. And, hey, credit to Tennessee. They came in with a game plan. They obviously weren't going to let Malik Willis get them beat. They had him throwing all safe stuff until the very end when they had to have him drop back and throw. So I thought it was a brilliant plan on Tennessee's part, and I thought they were going to have to throw it out the window when they got down 9-0, but they stuck with it and made it work, and good for them. I really feel like they did exactly what they wanted to do. And if it wasn't for the quarterback on the other sideline, they would have won the game.
I agree with you 99.78% of that in the game plan that Tennessee had. I thought they executed it and went about their game plan really well, except for in the fourth quarter, 13 minutes to go. This is before the Chiefs had their touchdown drive to tie it up. So the Tennessee was up 17-9. They have a Derrick Henry run of 4 yards, a Derrick Henry run of 7 yards. So they are 1st and 10 at the Chiefs' 39-yard line. Derrick Henry has just gained 11 yards the previous 2 plays. They hand it off to Derrick Henry again. He gains 1. It's 2nd down and 9 at the 38-yard line. And then they pass the ball the next 2 times with Malik Willis. Incomplete, and then a screen pass that Nick Bolton sniffed out, and it was -4 yards. I feel like if you hand it off to Derrick Henry a couple of more times, maybe he gets 3 more yards. It's at the 35. It's a 52-yard field goal, and that has a chance to really end the game at that point. With 10 minutes to go, Chiefs down 11, that would have been really tough for them to be able to then put 11 points on the board to tie it up when they had put 9 points on the board total. I thought they had a really good game plan, and I'm not sure why at that point they decided, let's pass it a couple times now that we're right here in field goal range.
Yeah, no, I remember the sequence of plays you're talking about. That was the big Nick Bolton play on third down there. But you know what? They also had reason to believe up by 8 at that time that the Chiefs were done. That they were going to stop them the way they were defending the Chiefs. So, I get your point. And in hindsight, that probably would have been a better strategy. Play for field goal position there rather than trying to maybe put the game away right there. But other than that, I feel like they did exactly what they wanted to do in here.
Adam Teicher from ESPN is our guest. So we look at the game and try to figure out what all took place in that game. They find a way to win. They're 6-2 on the season. There was no running game there, and I have been a let Pat play and even joked about I'd love to see what it looks like if Mahomes threw the ball 70 times. And you know what? He hasn't done it yet, Adam. So I'd love to see what it looks like with Mahomes throwing the ball 70 times. It's still 68. But the running game was just non-existent in that one. And I wonder, is this something that we've brought up a number of times so far through half of the season essentially? Is this just reality of what this Chiefs team is? That this running game is going to be hot and cold. Some days it's going to be pretty good and efficient, and the Chiefs are going to look, like they're unstoppable. And some days it's going to be to where they can't run the ball, and it's all going to be on Mahomes, and they may struggle to extend drives and things like that. Accept reality, or there is another level that the Chiefs can figure out this running game to be more consistent.
No, I'm wondering if this is something they're going to have to live with, that it's going to be maybe hot and cold for them. And I didn't really like Andy Reid's explanation, and he used it after I think it was the Indianapolis game when they couldn't run the ball also, and he basically said, well, these guys are tough up front. They're really tough to run the ball against. Well, that could explain why you don't run for 5 yards a carry, and do whatever you want with the running game. That the opponents are going to win their share of these battles. But the opponent doesn't have, when they're good up front, doesn't have to win every battle. The Chiefs are good enough up front to win a lot of battles against good defensive fronts like Tennessee or Indianapolis or basically every team they might play. I just don't feel like it takes a weak team, a weak opponent up front for the Chiefs to be to have a good running game. So which is kind of in essence, I think, what Andy Reid is saying. So I don't agree with that. I feel like the Chiefs can be successful with this running game. I feel like they have the players to make it work. Even if I'm not talking necessarily a top 5 or top 10, but good enough for what they need. I mean, they can't have, as much as you want to see Pat Mahomes throw the ball 70 times in a game, they can't ask this of him very often, because that's a really hard thing to do. They need to run the ball better, and they need to be more consistent about it. And I don't care who's playing up front for the opponent. I mean, they're going to be facing Aaron Donald in a few weeks here. Are they going to say, well, are they just going to throw up their hands and say, you know what, can't run the ball against the Rams because Aaron Donald's going to kick our butt? No, I mean, you have to find a way to make it work. And even if it doesn't work consistently, it has to be better than it was on Sunday night.
It's not a matter to me about, you have to run the ball more in quantity. To me, it's about the efficiency in which you run the football because, against Arizona, they ran the ball, 27 times. Or even, against the Chargers, they scored 20 points. I know 27 total, but they scored 20 points offensively, and they run the ball 18 times. Against San Francisco, they run the ball 21 times. Yet, one of those games, they, averaged 5 yards per carry because Clyde Edwards-Helaire had a 50-yarder in that game in which they averaged just under 3 without the 50-yarder. In another game against San Francisco, they averaged over 5 yards per carry because they had a good, consistent run game throughout. And it's really I wonder how much of a correlation there is as someone who is certainly on the side of I don't think you need to be 50-50 running and passing with Patrick Mahomes. I'm good with the, breakdown ratio that they have for the most part, but you need to be more efficient. Looking at the 4 games in which the Chiefs have scored 44 against Arizona, 41 against Tampa, 30 against the Raiders, and 44 against the San Francisco 49ers. That's 159 total points that they have scored in 4 games, essentially 40 per game. They have averaged 5 yards per carry and 133 yards on the ground per game. Now, when you're winning, you rush the ball a little bit more, but still, they were efficient at doing that. In the other 4 games in which offense scored 20 against the Chargers, scored 17 against the Colts, scored 20 against the Bills, and 20 against the Titans, they have averaged 3.8 yards per carry and 74 yards per game. And if I eliminate, and I know that's you can't take this game, take that play out, I get it. But the Clyde Edwards-Helaire 50-yarder at the end of the Chargers game, that wasn't essentially, this is how you won the game, it was you're icing the game. They averaged in those 4 games 3.2 yards per carry. And without Mahomes, 60 yards rushing against the Titans, which is not what we're talking about in the run game, in those 4 games, they averaged 2.6 yards per carry when they hand off. I'm not a proponent of saying you need to run the ball more, but certainly I think there's a correlation between the efficiency in what they're getting per run and the points they're putting up on the board in some of these games that makes you look at it and go, it probably is a lot more important than we're making it out to be because the Chiefs have Patrick Mahomes and they pass the ball and, okay, they can't run it, who cares?
No, I'm not going to say that because, they won a game on Sunday night where they carried, with their running backs, 13 carries for 14 yards. Yes, but that – how often are you going to do that? I'll submit you're not going to do that very often to win a game playing the way they played the other night. They did a great job with it, and we've talked about that. But don't do it again. Don't do that again. Don't ask your team to win a game that way again. So much needed to go right for them late in that game, and they made it work. And I'm wondering if Ryan Tannehill had played, would it have worked? Would they have come down at the end and kicked their field goal or whatever it might have been? I just feel like that game was such a narrow margin the way the Chiefs were playing it. So you don't want to do that again. And I just feel like with what the Chiefs have invested in their offensive line and their backs are certainly good enough. One of them is a former first-round draft choice. They should do better than, in 13 carries, a best run of 3 yards. I mean, that is just clearly unacceptable. And they will not win. They will not go deep in the playoffs if that continues to be the case with this set of circumstances in the running game. It has to be better. It needs to be part of the solution and not part of the problem.
Well, even in that game, we say, in any given Sunday, not necessarily, not even that a team can win, but, you may see something that you've never seen before. And we saw something on Sunday night, Adam, that we had literally never seen before for a player in a Chiefs uniform. Do you know what that was?
What?
Michael Burton. Michael Burton did not pick up a first down in carrying the football. It's the first time that Michael Burton has carried the ball in a Chiefs uniform and did not get a first down. That's how bad the running game was on Sunday night. Even Michael Burton couldn't get a yard.
Their special weapon didn't work. Yeah, you're right. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, it's the first time ever. We saw something Sunday we've never seen before.
I'll believe Pat Mahomes throwing 68 times before I'll believe that'll happen.
Exactly. Oh, yeah, right. Michael Burton isn't going to pick up 1 yard rushing the football. Come on, that is guaranteed. That's going to happen. Adam Teicher is our guest from ESPN, our Chiefs Insider. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back. We'll talk about the defense on the other side of the break, the other side of the football, what they did against the Titans, what we've seen from this team, another game in which we can look at it and say the defense was a big part of winning it, where, sometimes that hasn't been the case in Patrick Mahomes' time as the starting quarterback. We'll talk some defense. We'll talk some Jags with Adam Teicher, and maybe if there's concern around Harrison Butker. We'll do that coming up next.
Take the show with you by listening live on 810WHB.com, in the 810 mobile app, or by subscribing to The Zone wherever you get your podcasts. The Zone with Jason Anderson.
Not much of a break yesterday, Herbie, unless you're counting lunch. I had lunch. That was good, right?
Weekdays from 10 to 2 on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
All right, we'll continue right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Jason Anderson, Josh Brisco, Beards. We'll talk some college football at noon with Braden Gall. Talking some Chiefs football. Our Chiefs insider from ESPN continues here with us, Adam Teicher. Adam, before we get to the defense, let's talk about Harrison Butker, if there is a concern, or is this sort of 2020 all over again, and then when it counted, Harrison Butker came through. But what have you made so far of Butker and what we've seen when he's been healthy?
Yeah, no, that's why I asked Andy Reid, why he went for it on that fourth down in overtime.
I loved the question.
I'm just curious, how much of it had to do with wanting to finish the game off, and how much was it you weren't sure about your kicker, because that has to be a concern. I think he'll get it straightened out. I think he's too good of a kicker to keep struggling like he has been the last few weeks, but. There has to be concern. I mean, he hurt his ankle and had to sit out for, 4 games, I think it was. And, I think he's fine physically now, but stuff happens. And, guys get out of rhythm and all that. And so it has to be a concern. And I feel like, he'll respond sooner or later, but will it be, when the next time they need him to win a game or in a close game, will he respond the way they need him to? So it's worth keeping an eye on. And, it's a little bit telling to me that the Chiefs have been keeping the practice squad kicker on the practice squad. Matthew Wright is still around. And I feel like they wouldn't have him around if they felt like everything was in a good spot.
Yeah, it's got to be between the ears because he's too good of a kicker for it not to be. But he's so good when it's 50 or more yards or when you have to have it. And then in a game where, and it wasn't necessarily a have-to-have-it field goal down 17-9, but, man, it would have been nice to have it. Would have put you in a different position, but, and just simply misses it and slides it to the right, an extra point, hooks it to the left. If the game was on the line on either of those kicks, I bet he splits the uprights. I mean, I don't know, is it just between the ears with him that if it's simply too easy that he loses concentration or doesn't have that as much direct focus on the total mechanics to put it between the uprights? I don't know, but it would seem that it's between the ears.
I don't think so. I mean, in terms of losing focus when it's not a clutch kick, I don't think so. I mean, he's not. I don't think he's that kind of guy. I feel like he's as serious about what he's doing as anybody. I mean, he's as reflective on what happened and eager to get to the bottom of it as anybody is. And so any kicker I've been around. So I can't tell you what it is. But I don't think it's that he's not taking some of these kicks seriously. I don't think that's it at all.
In the last 3 years, Harrison Butker is 8 of 12 from 40 to 49 yards at 66%. He is 13 of 16 from 50 or more yards at 81%. The last 3 years, Harrison Butker is more accurate 50 or more yards than he is between 40 to 49.
Well,
That's
that could
odd.
be reflective a little bit maybe of the Chiefs won't send him out from 50-plus unless they feel like the conditions are right
True.
in terms of wind and or turf, where they're maybe more willing to do that from 40 or less than 50. But, that is a pretty interesting statistic, no doubt.
Yeah, usually maybe it's a little like Steph Curry. The further he gets away, the better he is. Steph Curry layups, 25%. Threes from half court, 31%, oddly enough. Weird. Adam Teicher is our guest here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Let's talk about the defense and so many different players, Adam, that we've talked about this year that we've discussed. Because to me, maybe it is all about health. Maybe if he was healthy throughout the last couple of years, it might be different, and what we might have been talking about Colin Saunders being an integral part of this team returning this year. But injuries just simply sapped any chance of being consistent and really improving and developing over the years. And now we see him healthy, and this is what he can do. But it's definitely needed. And at the same time, it's like, we see Colin Saunders stepping up, and we see Derek Nottie that just hasn't been a guy that, felt like he was underrated on this team. And he's really struggled this year, has Derek Nottie. So they've got some good performances from guys across the board, and they've got some underwhelming performances from, Nottie in particular. And luckily, Colin Saunders is stepping up. Do you think that we may see more of Colin Saunders as the season progresses, and maybe less Derek Nottie if he continues to be, moved around on the defensive line that we hadn't really seen before in his time with the Chiefs?
Yeah, I do think that's possible because, it's pretty glaring that Colin Saunders is the one getting some stuff done. So I would expect that. But Derek Nottie still, I wouldn't think the Chiefs are going to keep up with or give up on him because he's given the Chiefs some pretty good football over the years, and I think they're going to need him. Without Turk Morton, I think he's going to be a kind of a valuable guy. So I guess it would be surprising to see the Chiefs just give up on him completely and just say, okay, you're just a total bench guy. But it is pretty glaring right now, no doubt.
Visiting with Adam Teicher from ESPN Chiefs Insider, and the way the defense played overall, and outside of those two Derrick Henry runs, and again we talk about, you take those away. Well, you can't, because those ended up being touchdown drives, and the other 3 points came from an interception. So those were the 3 scoring drives. I thought the defense played really, really well. They were benefiting also from the fact that they really didn't have a quarterback in the Titans. So that certainly helped. But in terms of shutting down or limiting Derrick Henry, who had 2 carries, 80 yards, and 13 carries, 35 yards, or whatever it might have been in that game, I thought they played pretty well from that standpoint. And they get Trent McDuffie back at him that we didn't even talk about yesterday at all. And his name really wasn't called, because they didn't go his way. They didn't throw the ball very often, but they went his way one time, and he made the play to knock it away. But knowing that Derrick Henry was going to be the focus, knowing that it was going to be figuring out ways to get Derrick Henry involved, I thought Chiefs defense was able to really limit what he was capable of doing, which then put them in a precarious position of having to rely on Malik Willis, even though he didn't throw the ball very often. When he did, those essentially turned out to be drive enders.
Yeah, and, Chiefs did a nice job. I think Henry was 8 for 23, if I'm not mistaken, in the second half. So you'll take that all the time from him if you're the Chiefs. So, hey, credit to the Chiefs. Their defense played a big part in winning that game. There's no doubt about that. So that's job one. But I'm not ready to declare all well with the Chiefs defensively just because of what I saw against Tennessee. That was a team that we know had a limited quarterback, and it was obvious that Tennessee had a limited game plan. They saw a limited path to victory. And, the Chiefs took advantage of it, but it's pretty easy. I think we all could have there were a lot of teams that could have taken advantage of that under those circumstances. So I feel like this game coming up on Sunday is going to be a bigger challenge, and there'll be bigger challenges for the Chiefs, no doubt. And I just don't know where the Chiefs are defensively right now. They're doing some good things. There's no doubt about it, but I don't know that they're doing them consistently enough. So it's just, to me, that part of the game, you just never know what you're going to get from the Chiefs week to week on defense.
And I think, and I agree. I think bigger picture, looking at what this Chiefs defense is, and maybe it's because we still have those memories of 2018, early memories of 2019 of what the defense was at certain times in 2020 and even last year. Like, we look through the season, and the Chiefs' opponents have scored 21, 24, 20. 31 bucks, and that was even late in the game, some garbage time points. 29 for the Raiders, 24 for the Bills, 23 for the 49ers, and 17 for the Titans, 3 of those being the interception in which they didn't get a first down and they kicked a field goal on that particular drive. Bigger picture, if we're talking about how this team wins the Super Bowl, if you say, going through and seeing the Cardinals with their offensive weapons, even though they didn't have Hopkins, Chargers with Justin Herbert, Bucks and Tom Brady, and the Raiders have Devontae Adams, and we know what the Bills can do, and the 49ers continuing to invest and starting to in their offense. Titans, obviously not one that would be in that category, to go through and say, one team scored in the 30s, and that's because the game was out of hand, and another team scored 29, and they had 17, in like the first quarter, and the defense ended up tightening up. I think bigger picture, when we look at what this team can do Super Bowl-wise, the defense, to me, certainly is good enough to go and do that, because I felt like they've won a couple of games for this team, Titans and Chargers, in how they played, to allow Mahomes then to make some plays to then make a difference, just as what that Super Bowl was in 2019 against the 49ers, that the defense had to hold the 49ers at bay before Mahomes and the offense got rolling.
Yeah, and, the Chiefs were very good early in the season in run defense, and they haven't been as good the last, 3-4 games, whatever it is. So that part is
True.
It's gone, I think, maybe gone backwards. Their pass rush is still a little bit too spotty for my taste. They've did a nice job in San Francisco for the first 3 quarters, but fell behind 10-0 because they couldn't get anything done with it in the first quarter. So that part of it's still a little too up and down. I think the Chiefs have a lot of reason to feel encouraged, though, by this. I mean, look, the other night, the Chiefs had 6 guys on defense, 6 rookies on defense who were playing a lot. You had Williams playing and Cook and McDuffie and Jalen Watson and Chenal and Karlaftis. I mean, you would have every reason to believe those guys are going to be better players the second half of the season than they were in the first half. And if that's true, I think the Chiefs have some things to look forward to. So I feel like it's possible the Chiefs can get to a point where they want to be on defense, but we certainly haven't seen it consistently so far.
All right, last one. Jags this week in concern of a trap game, tough physical game against the Titans, find a way to win in overtime. The Chargers game has now been flexed to Sunday Night Football, a big divisional matchup. And in the middle is this 3-6 team at noon on Sunday at Arrowhead.
Yeah, no, you always wonder about that. I just feel like the Chiefs have been pretty good in these kinds of situations. They've answered the bell under Andy Reid. They've always kind of had their minds on the task at hand. That doesn't mean they've always played well. But they've been faced with a few of these situations. You remember early in the year they were coming off the Chargers game, and they had the Colts, and then they were looking after that at the Bucks. And then they played the Bucks, and then they had the Raiders at home, and then they played against the Bills coming up. So they've had a few of these kind of situations, and to me, maybe the more interesting thing is you look at the Chiefs' better games, the games you'd say, hey, the Chiefs played the best 3 games of the year this year. They've all been on the road, Arizona, Tampa, and San Francisco, and every game they've been in at home, they either lost or really struggled. And that, to me, is a more interesting issue. I think this year you can make the case definitely that Chiefs are a better team on the road than they've been at home. And I feel like that since Andy Reid's been here. Maybe their won-loss record's not quite as good, but they've done a lot of really good things at home or on the road, more good things on the road than they have at home. Since Andy Reid's been here, and not that you want to play on the road. You'd always rather play at Arrowhead if you're the Chiefs, but for whatever reason, they just haven't been the same team playing at Arrowhead that they have on the road.
Yeah, something that continues to need to be unpacked for this Chiefs team. All right, a score in mind for Chiefs and Jags Sunday at noon?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be a blowout. I'll take the Chiefs maybe 31-20, something like that. I feel like it'll be maybe a competitive game that the Jaguars will do enough good things to make it interesting. So I'll say somewhere in the neighborhood of 31-20.
All right, we'll see what happens. Adam Teicher from ESPN Chiefs Insider. Adam, you're the man. Really appreciate the time as always, sir. Enjoy the football. We will talk next week.
Good stuff, Jason. Talk to you then.
Absolutely. There's Adam Teicher from ESPN Chiefs Insider. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back. We continue rolling more Zone on this Tuesday.
You're in the zone with Jason Anderson on Sports Radio 810 WHB. The Zone with Jason Anderson.
You could have also gone.
Weekdays from 10 to 2 on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
The running game is such an interesting topic around here because there's, the analytics side of it as to maybe running backs in general. Not that you should never run the ball, although there are some with the extreme view of never run the football. I don't really believe that's the case of the quote-unquote analytics world. But just a simple, you don't need to spend a lot of resources and investment in a running back as opposed to the offensive line and protection and opening up the holes for the players to go and get what is blocked for them. Spend the money in the passing game, quarterback, wide receivers, etc.
Offensive line to make your running game better.
For sure.
Yep.
So, but it's an interesting discussion around here because the Chiefs draft Clyde Edwards-Helaire in the first round. And that became a topic of first-round running backs. Where's the value? Okay, at what point is it okay to draft a running back? Is it second round, so it's okay with the 33rd pick but not the 32nd pick? Is there a cutoff where you feel like the value is then diminishing returns in the first, second, third, fourth, whatever it might be in drafting a running back and what you get out of them, especially when you've got Patrick Mahomes? And all of that stuff has been an interesting debate. And then Ronald Jones, Isaiah Pacheco, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Jerick McKinnon. Is it the running back that's the issue with the running game overall? So I think there's an acknowledgement of the value, even from those like me or even you, that I'm good with 70-30 split. I'm good with 70% passing and 30% running. But those 30% runs shouldn't be 2 yards a pop.
Yes.
It's at least the threat, because if teams are saying we're going to rush 4 and drop 7, we're going to have 6 men in the box, well then damn it, run the ball at them. Be able to do that when the Bengals say we're dropping 8 and bringing 3 and we're going to have 5 men in the box. You should be running it for 6 yards a pop every time. Yet they didn't. And that's where the importance of the efficiency and looking at what we've seen so far this year in the 4 games where they've scored at least 30 points and the 4 games when they've scored 20 points or less, the difference in just being able to run the football.
One thing that everyone can universally agree on, I think, is that when you run the ball, you want to do it effectively.
That's right.
That's really what it is. The split arguments and all of that, I think, are more interesting, especially with a team like the Chiefs, where you have Patrick Mahomes, who can throw the ball almost 70 times. And now, again, that wasn't the offense working great even in that instance. So all that's interesting, but not really the point that you're getting at, which I think is the most dire one for the Chiefs right now. You want to be effective when you do choose to run the ball, however much you're doing it. And you really need to be able to punish defenses for saying, no, you won't. You won't. Stop it. You're not going to run the football on us.
I dare you.
And that's, look, the Titans having a good front. I understand where Teicher's coming from, saying that can't be your excuse every week. He's right. But it is a good front for the Titans. However, like you just said, if you are playing aggressively to manage the pass against the Chiefs, and you're trying to keep stuff in front of you, I go back to that Bills game in Clyde's rookie year of remembering the Bills linebackers literally taking their first step backwards at the snap. When they're doing that, you do need to get 6 or 7 yards per carry because you can't allow them to do that to your passing game. And also, it's just free yards. So that part of it has to come back around for the Chiefs.
Chargers, Colts, Bills, Titans, average 19 a game. Cardinals, Bucks, Raiders, 49ers averaged 40 points per game in those 4. 5 yards per carry in those 4 games in which they got to 40 points. In the 4 games that they got 19, I don't think this is being screwed with the stats. I think this is presenting what the game was. If you take out the 50-yard run by Edwards-Helaire when they were just icing the game, those 50 yards weren't on a crucial scoring drive. And the 60 yards from Patrick Mahomes, when we're talking about actually handing the ball off, those 4 games averaged 2.6 yards per carry.
It's not good, Jason.
There's got to be a correlation somewhere. If you can't run it and they say we dare you to run it, well, it's going to, at least eliminate or limit your points.
This SportsCenter is brought to you by Special Olympics Kansas. Special Olympics Kansas, check out their sports memorabilia auction on November 12th at the Shawnee Civic Center. Proceeds benefit Special Olympics Kansas programming and athletes. Patrick Mahomes Super Bowl helmet, Sporting KC gift basket, signed Bill Self clipboard, signed Marquez Valdez-Scantling jersey, and more. Learn more at SOKS.org. The Chiefs are moving back to primetime once more in Week 11. The NFL announced its first flex scheduling move of the year today, moving Chiefs-Chargers in L.A. to Sunday Night Football on November 20th. Game was originally scheduled for 3:25. Bengals-Steelers, originally scheduled for Sunday night, will move to the afternoon. In college ball, wins across the board for the local teams. KU has Hawk Talk tonight at 6 before Sports Night with Sterling Holmes. Braden Gall joins the Zone to break down college football and Chiefs-Titans next in the Zone. This is SportsCenter.
The Zone with Jason Anderson.
Even though last night I did suffer my worst fantasy football beat.
Nobody cares.
Weekdays from 10 to 2 on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
All right, we continue right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Jason Anderson, Josh Brisco, and Beards. NFL Network saying that Josh Allen is going to be limited this week and is undergoing tests to determine severity of his arm that got pulled back on the, second to last pass of the game there against the Jets, and a fumble in which they recovered. He had one more play, but more tests that he is undergoing to determine the severity of that arm injury that he was holding, and the elbow and hand as he was kind of shaking that out. So we'll see what happens with that in the 2017 loss. And even that next throw, he immediately held his arm after he threw it. So we'll see what happens with that, but wanted to pass that along that he's going to be limited this week and tests to determine severity. Let's talk with Braden Gall, college football insider, 440 Podcast Network, ESPN Radio, Athlon Sports, Fringe Element, Football Show, all of that, where you can find Braden Gall, and certainly here on Tuesdays at noon. Braden, what's up, man? How are you, sir?
I'm doing well, doing better than the offensive game plan the Titans put forth on Sunday evening in the second half. So I'm doing quite well. Although Titans fans, one of the few fan bases in the entire AFC that is studying the Josh Allen injury as closely as Buffalo is, because they don't feel like they have any chance to beat Buffalo at all, and they feel pretty comfortable, honestly, if they were fully healthy going back to Arrowhead in the playoffs. So Andy Reid and Mike Vrabel, great chess match between two great football minds for sure.
It is unbelievable how these games play out. That all week last week, I'm like, this is not the same Titans team. They may not have Tannehill. They don't have A.J. Brown. They don't have Harold Landry. I mean, this is a different team. And if the Chiefs just simply keep, like, Derrick Henry hasn't been the reason why the Titans have won some of these games. Last year or 2 years ago, last year, the 27-3 game, it was A.J. Brown was dominant early in the game, and then they didn't need him anymore at that point. And that defense for the Titans was really, really dominant. Well, turned out to be a struggle for the Chiefs, and they win it in overtime. Exactly how I said the game would go.
68 pass attempts and 40 yards of scrambling on a final drive to tie the game. No, that defensive line is for real, y'all. And it doesn't have Harold. He doesn't even have Harold Landry. They didn't have Amani Hooker or Elijah Molden, two of their starting five defensive backs. Like that they are so good on defense. It's scary what they could be in the future, but they are also so lacking on offense that their upside is severely limited. But for whatever reason, Vrabel has had a very good time managing Andy Reid's offenses, which very few people can say. So if that's, like, again, I think Kansas City and Buffalo are the class of the AFC. I know we're going to talk college football. Those are the two teams you have to go through if you're going to get to a Super Bowl. I think Baltimore could be dangerous, but otherwise you're going to have to go through Buffalo or Kansas City. And the history shows in the last 5 years between Kansas City and Tennessee that those games are far closer than when the Titans go up to Buffalo, for sure.
Braden Gall is our guest, our college football insider. Also, we like talking some Titans with him as well, especially when it's pre- and post-Titans week. Let's talk some college football. What's a defender to do when they run 30 yards down the field with a snap over the head of a punter, and the punter picks up the ball, turns around, and the guy's diving at him, and then in that time the punter is able to kick the ball, and then it's roughing the kicker? Eli Drinkwitz said after the game that they got rewarded for doing something pretty bad in terms of the rule, whether it was the letter of the law. But what's a player to do on that, and what was your takeaway and reaction to that play?
Honestly, I don't know, because there's very, very few times in sports, but it happens every now and then, be it hockey or racing, or, we saw the guy in NASCAR just, just slamming around the wall in Martinsville or whatever. And I'm not even a racing fan, and that thing got into my timeline. Sometimes in sports, there's just these bizarro situations. I would like to think that a referee that there can be some subjectivity involved. I mean, we do it with pass interference. We do, and this is another thing with football. That's not to get me sidetracked on your question here, but we just get rid of pass interference if a ball is uncatchable, right? So subjectively, an official can just say, yeah, that wasn't catchable, so pass interference didn't count. Where we never do that with holding. There's a receiver being held 400 yards away from the play, and we're going to call holding on that play, and it had nothing to do with the outcome of the play, but we're going to call holding. And so I'd like to see some of that subjectivity in holding calls. Again, like the Cody Hollister block in the back, which really wasn't a block in the back, that had nothing to do with the play.
Yeah,
I would like to see those types of plays be more subjective. And in this, and to your point about this question, again, it follows the letter of the law, right? It's following the exact specifics. But what, do you have to stop charging the guy? What do you do? How is a defender supposed to approach that situation? And that I think is where the official has to probably maybe use some I don't know, if cooler heads should prevail is the right term here. Because again, if you follow the letter of the law, it probably was called correctly, right? But how do you enforce it in that situation? Because the letter of the law wasn't written for that situation, right?
And
so I don't know. Maybe an official is just having the ability to have a conversation with other officials saying, what do we do here with this? And again, I know as soon as you do that, somebody on Twitter is going to be like, "Whoa," start screaming at us. So.
Yeah, I mean, what's the subjectivity of obvious kicking or obvious kicking,
right?
What form or whatever it might have been, an obvious kicking position by the punter. What part of that was an obvious kicking position by the punter when he picked the ball up? He could have just picked it up and ran to his right, and just ran and then took 5 or 6 extra steps and then kicked it. I don't think the defender knew. I tweeted this out too, that this was my own ignorance, but I always thought when the ball hit the ground, it eliminates the protection for the punter. Obviously, that's not the case. It's only outside the tackle box.
You know what? I that sounds right to me too for some reason, and I'm not sure I've ever actually read the rules. And now that I think about it. Only been doing this for 20 years, but it's no big deal. It does seem, but again, that's the common sense we're talking about. If a ball, if the ball hits the ground or goes over a punter's head or is outside the tackle boxes, then some of the rules maybe don't apply or whatever. There's ways to kind of, again, we see this in football more than you think. Where, and again, this was the Alabama-Texas game, right? At the end of the Alabama-Texas game with the safety, where they called roughing because it was targeting, but you can overturn the targeting, but you can't overturn the roughing. And so they just came back and they were like, no, wait a second, we didn't mean that. And it's wait a second, you can't just it was the right, you ended up in the right place, but you did not follow any of the rules correctly. So and again, only in football, and this is one that I laugh about all the time. I think, unless you can correct me and point out another sport that does this, only in football when both sides cheat, we both just say okay, do over. It's the only
try it again.
It's the only sport where okay, that the offense cheated, the defense cheated. We're just going to forget that happened, and we're going to try again. Do it, redo, and that's the only. I can't think of a sport that does that. Maybe I'm wrong, but hockey has penalty. People go to the penalty box with matching minors, but you don't redo the period or whatever. So it's sort of already kind of a finicky, subjective sport in those moments anyway. When the rules are breaking down. I think you could probably put some stuff that's clearer into the rule book about obvious kicking situations or whatever.
There was only one team in the country that could happen to, though, right?
I don't know, man. You watch college football this year. I could probably put about 15 of them on there. Half of them are in the Big Ten West. So.
My brother texted me, who's a volleyball referee here in the Kansas City area for high school, says volleyball has a reserve, which is a redo. So. I didn't know that.
All right, there we go.
Is there any chance that's pronounced reserve, Jason?
I just read it as reserve. So yes, reserve.
That
yes.
makes more sense, right? I mean,
I'm just reading it quickly. I'm on the air reading these things.
To a contract, or are you resigning? Which one is it?
This is on your brother. Your brother owed you a hash mark.
It's not
there.
his fault. He was trying to help out. He let us know that volleyball.
Nope.
Yes, that does have
Well, I was going to say, does anyone else find it odd that re-signing a player and a player resigning are like the two most polar opposite outcomes of an event, and they are the exact same word? I find that one to be ridiculous as well.
No, I'm very glad that Josh weighed in there because it is absolutely reserve, which is a redo. So yes, no, they've got a reserve player. When that reserve player is ready to come in, they got to do the whole thing over.
Now wait a second.
You know what? That point was taking place, but we wanted a reserve player to be in there. Let's just play that one over. Yeah, reserve sounds better.
Now you might have started. He might have already stated this in the text message, but was it because both sides cheated?
Yeah, I don't know.
Is that why it's a reserve, or like in tennis you get a let, right? Like it hits the net,
right.
It's not technically
because
a
one
serve,
side.
you get a redo. But that's only one side that's cheating.
It's
Again,
true.
in football, both sides. Okay, it's like talking to my children. Like the 6-year-old cheated, the 4-year-old cheated. You're both crying. Stop it. Redo the play. Okay,
that's right. Redo the playing of what you guys are doing. Also, it doesn't matter like the amount either, because the Chiefs had one penalty called on them on the 2-point conversion, the first one, and the Titans had 2, and 2-1 still cancels each other out.
You were lined up in the neutral zone. You tried to commit murder, offsetting penalties.
Well. And again, I say this not as a Titan fan because I am not one. I'm a card-carrying, shareholding member of the Green Bay Packer ownership group. But like, apparently, ripping people's helmets off is not cheating either. So that's part of this.
No, that should have been offsetting. I am all for saying that redo that one a third time, which is what they did. That offsetting, that it was a bear hug. And then trying to get away from said bear hug hold, it did have Kelsey going to the helmet to try to use his left arm to get away, and his helmet comes off, illegal hands to the face, offsetting, like you said, and redo it.
Yeah. I do think when you play the Titans, anybody in the NFL, if the officials are going to let stuff go, you're going to have to embrace the back alley fight element of the game for sure. So.
My brother texts as well and says it's when both officials cannot come to a conclusion or they had different calls. They then have a space dash space serve. Thank you for the
what the hell is a comma doing in there?
Not a comma. Space dash space serve. So it isn't necessarily both sides cheating, both sides doing something against the rules that then we say, you know what, let's just do that over because both of you guys were in the wrong. Both of you go to your room.
It's just incompetent officiating at that point.
Yeah.
This is live radio, folks. Live radio, baby.
So he gets a 2-year extension before the game, does Eli Drinkwitz, and then they go and lose to Kentucky in, of course, perfect Missouri ways. It doesn't matter the coach or the players or anything like that. It's just simply putting on the jersey. They're cursed, whatever. The 2-year extension got a lot of reaction locally and throughout the state of, all right, so what's he done to prove that Desiree Reed-Francois says that he deserves 2 more years? Is this just simply it's a price of doing business in recruiting that you sign a piece of paper and that piece of paper is essentially telling recruits, no, he's good. He's good. You can still go to Mizzou. He's fine.
Yeah, I would say with the exception of the fully guaranteed contracts, Jimbo Fisher, namely, contract extensions are not really worth the paper they're printed on, just like in its truest form. In a more analytical conversation about the situation, I personally, and Missouri fans may not want to hear this, maybe they do, I don't know. I'm fascinated to know what everybody thinks because I love sort of hearing from where the general line of thinking is from a fan base. But I personally believe in at programs like Missouri, Kentucky, South Carolina, Arkansas, and with Texas and Oklahoma joining the league, it's going to be even more difficult. Ole Miss is dealing with this right now because Lane Kiffin, everyone wants to hire him, but he's pretty happy there. I don't think he's going to leave. There is so much about patience that is so critical to building a program. And so I personally err on the side of being conservative when it comes to coaches. Again, the actual extension itself, does it change the specifics of a buyout? Sure, that has an impact on a program or whatever, should something happen down the road. But largely it doesn't change your decision to either stick with a guy, invest in a guy, or not. Because, again, like you said, it's mostly just for the headlines, it's for the tweets, it's for the recruits. It's not really for – it doesn't actually change where the program could go 12, 18, 24 months from now. But there's a far deeper conversation to be had about his future. And what does the program look like? And I've pretty much given you a stock line every time you've asked me that, which is if recruiting is pretty well, how do the losses look? How do the wins look? How does the program feel? And if investment and patience feels like it could result in progress, then I think that's I'm always going to err on that side of things. Like that's just, I think it's missing in college football in general, especially at programs that aren't named Alabama or Ohio State or Texas, where expectations are different and the speed with which you are supposed to turn around a program is different. Mm-hmm. Lance Leipold at Kansas notwithstanding, because I think the Big 12 is very different than playing in the SEC. Josh Heupel is ruining coaching evaluations for a lot of people as well. But again, Tennessee's resources, and this is an argument I've had now for 15 years with people, Tennessee's ability to win championships never went anywhere. They just kept hiring terrible people for the jobs. And so this is where you just don't know if you're a Missouri fan. Like I don't think you know yet, and that's a tough place to be. But in that situation, I tend to err on the side of patience and investment, because if you invest in the program, whether it's NIL or facilities or finding the right balance of whatever that may look like, all of that stuff can still be used by the next guy. So I think you can always go with patience and investment as a strategy, and it's probably going to work out. It doesn't mean necessarily long-term, but it could also help the next step as well if it doesn't work out.
I think there are a couple things, like you kind of
like that kind of stuff gets out. And so so far I have not heard that type of conversation about Missouri.
Yeah. And the matchup that they had this weekend, you're talking about a guy who's in year 10 or 11, and in year 4, he had a 2-10 start, a 2-10 season, 5-7, and then he started that year 2-3.